Nickelodeon Universe at the Mall of America originally opened in 1992 as Knott's Camp Snoopy, before eventually transitioning to the current Nickelodeon theme in 2008. It's a completely indoor theme park in the middle of one of the biggest malls in the world in Bloomington, Minnesota, just outside of Minneapolis. You can still tell the park used to be themed to Knott's Berry Farm with some of its original rides like the Log Chute and Pepsi Orange Streak still having that woodsy aesthetic. Most of the park is very heavily themed to Nickelodeon now, though, so you have characters ranging from SpongeBob to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to Paw Patrol represented around the park. In terms of pricing for this park, there are a few different options depending on how much you want to do. I opted for the all-day wristband, which is a little over $50 on peak days and $42 on non-peak days, like during the week. If you strictly want to do all 5 of the coasters one time, though, you can pay per ride with each coaster costing about $8 a piece, and you could save some money that way. It's very easy to get any of these options at the kiosks located in the park entrance on either side of the mall. You can just walk in without having to pay anything, or just ride one ride and get out if you're a local, which is a nice feature. They really utilize that space as much as possible since it's impossible to expand in an already existing building, so there's just rides on top of rides everywhere you look, with plenty of stuff to do when you visit. You can get to this park by simply driving and parking in the massive parking garage surrounding the mall, but it's also very easy to access the park via the city's light rail system, which is what I did. Especially if you're coming from the airport or even on a layover, there's a designated stop on the blue line for the mall, only a couple of stops away from the airport, making it extremely convenient to use, and it only costs a couple of bucks a trip. This drops you off below the mall, and you go up a floor and go towards the center of the mall where the park is located. You can then get your ride wristbands if you haven't already and start having fun inside the park. If you head from the east side where the light rail is located, you are greeted by one of the bigger flat rides in the park, Shredder's Mutant Masher, a swinging pendulum ride. This is also where the park's log flume, Log Chute is, and this is genuinely one of the best log flumes I've been on. It usually gets a pretty long line, but it is more than worth it with its elaborate woodland theming, and even has giant animatronics of Babe the Blue Ox and Paul Bunyan towards the end. You can also eventually get to the entrance of the Fairly Odd Coaster by continuing down the main path, the park's Gerstlauer Spinner. This was actually the original one of these clones built in 2004, and it's cool to see why all of the turns are where they are based on the park's layout. You can then pass another entrance for the park near here with another ticket kiosk, as well as a family wave swinger surrounding by the coaster's long turn. If you go more towards the center of the park, this is where the park's Intamin Surf Rider Avatar Airbender is, and I have a separate review of that coaster on the channel. This is also where a few small flat rides are, such as Brain Surge, a small drop tower called Splatosphere, and the newest ride in the park, Fly with Appa, which is very similar to Dumbo at the Disney parks. This is also where the powered kiddie coaster is, back at the Barnyard Hayride. As you get to the northwest section of the park, this has a giant's ropes course themed around the Flying Dutchman with a 100-foot tall slide at the top. This is also where the park's shooting dark ride called Ghost Blaster is, which is extremely similar to the Boo Blasters at Legacy Cedar Fair parks. This corner of the park also has the biggest coaster in the park, Rock Bottom Plunge, a Gerstlauer Eurofighter with a Beyond vertical drop that also has a separate review on this channel. As you continue down the main pathway, there's another big coaster, Pepsi Orange Streak, which actually just got an all-new sign and queue line update just after I went in January, which looks very refreshing. The coaster is mainly just a tour around the park, but also goes through Log Chute, so there's actually some theming along the way too. The section also has some bumper cars, a Ferris wheel, and a carousel at the end of the midway. Further down this pathway, there's also a bunch of other kiddie rides, and a dedicated area for the Paw Patrol show, which got some big lines during my visit from what I could tell passing over it on Pepsi Orange Streak. Finally, I kind of skipped over the southwest corner of the park, which has a separately ticketed Fly Over America attraction, which is like a lower budget Soarin' that costs 27 extra bucks, so I did not do it during my visit. What you should not skip over in this section is TMNT Shell Shock, which is a very unique Gerstlauer Skyfly flat ride that also has a dedicated review on this channel. It's honestly pretty hard to get these vehicles spinning, but once you do get them going, this is probably the best ride in the park. Overall, this is a really fun indoor park and probably the best of this type in the country. I have not visited the other Nickelodeon Universe in New Jersey yet, but this park looks way better than that one for a few reasons. This park usually has all of its major rides open during the peak times of year, while New Jersey's have had ride closures since it opened, including its biggest coaster, TMNT Shellraiser, being closed since January of 2024. This park also looks way better with all of its natural light throughout the park, and also a lot of plant life as well, which is maintained throughout the year. This park just seems way better run and a much better time overall. The operations weren't perfect, as many of the rides had only 1 or 2 trains running during my visit, but the lines weren't too bad either. There isn't a ton of food actually inside the park, but you are in a giant mall, of course, so there's a ton of food options all around the mall, including a food court right next to the park's log flume. It's a great park to visit during the winter when nothing else in the area is open, but is also well worth a trip in the summer on your way to Valley Fair, as you can get in, get the credits, and get out very quickly if you want to. I'd highly recommend a visit to this charming indoor park and a trip to Minnesota in general. Be sure to check out my other Nickelodeon Universe ride reviews and be on the lookout for more theme park content in the near future.